we're going to do a lesson, a Bible study. I'm calling Jesus Calms the Storm. I believe there's more than one place in Scriptures where he's calmed a storm, but this one in particular was the one I'm focused on tonight, and it's in Mark chapter 4. I think it's only 7 verses long, so we have time for us to read each verse out of each version, so we can see a little bit of the differences and see if the differences shed more light on what we're reading. So, and we're going to start in chapter 4 of Mark, starting with verse 35. And Dave, whenever you get there, you can start reading, okay?
All, a servant of Jesus Christ.
No. Are you in Mark?
Mark 4.
Mark 4, verse 35. And this comes after he has healed some sick people,
Mark
and
4.
he has cast out some devils or demons, and he has been giving a lot of parables to the people, speaking that to them. And this is an occurrence that happens shortly after that, and I'm sure he was exhausted after doing all that before we come to verse 35. But it doesn't tell us so he's tired, but in natural, I'm sure he is. It hints at it, though.
35 to 41.
In chapter 41, chapter 4, and then verse 35.
And when they had sent away the multitude, they took him even as he was in the ship, and there were also with him other little ships.
Okay. You want to make a comment on it before I have Josie read the same verse out of hers?
No?
Nope. Okay. Josie?
It was 4:35, right?
Mm-hmm. Don't forget your mic, because we can't hear you. Oh, there you go. Helps to have
As evening fell, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let's cross to the other side of the lake."
Okay. All right. And in mine, do you have a comment to make about that?
No.
Okay. If I forget to ask for comments, be sure and bring it to my attention. Okay. In the Amplified, it says, on that same day, talking about the same day that he cast out demons and healed some sick people and preached some parables, that same day, when evening had come, he said to them, let's go over to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. And I'm going to stop right here for a minute and talk about Galilee. It says Sea of Galilee, and I don't know why it does, because upon further study, it was smaller than what we consider a sea. And in some places, it is referred to as a lake. Some places call it Lake Tiberias, or Lake Kinneret, or Lake Kinnereth. And it's a freshwater lake in Israel. It's approximately 33 miles around in circumference. If you were to travel around it, it's about 13 miles long and about 8 miles wide, and about 141 feet deep. So it's pretty good size for a lake, but it's not really big enough to be a sea in my book. But in some places in scriptures and not in scriptures, it refers to it as a sea. It's the scene of a lot of episodes of things that Jesus has done, such as the Sermon on the Mount and when he walked on water, if I understand. Anyway, that's Galilee. So they were on one side of it, and Jesus said they were going to go to the other side of it. So it's not like they could just yell across the edges of it. It was too far away. So, all right. Josie, will you read verse 30? Well, no, I said it that way because I was going to do it different, but I changed my mind. Okay, we're going to do Dave, Josie, and then me. Okay, I got that written down in my Bible wrong. Sorry. We're going to all get a chance to read tonight. Oh, boy. That want to read, that is. Okay. Verse 36, Dave.
And when they had sent away the multitude, they took him even as he was in the ship, and there were also with him other little ships.
Okay.
I thought I just read that.
Read 35 again and let's see. Do 35 and 36 together and let's see what happens.
And the same day when the even was come, he saith unto them, Let us pass over unto the other side. And when they had sent away the multitude, they took him even as he was in the ship, and there were also with him other little ships.
Okay. And that's something that we often read over this so fast we don't realize there's more than one ship, more than one boat, more than one ship involved. And I haven't studied to see why sometimes some of them call it a ship and some call it a boat. I think of a ship as bigger than a boat, but I haven't really studied boats or ships, so I don't know about that. But in yours, it tells how he sent they sent the crowd away. In some renditions of this verse, it says they left the crowd. So I don't know if the crowd was sent away or they left the crowd, but anyway, the meeting was broken up, I guess. It was discontinued. Do you have anything to add since I opened my big mouth before I should have? See, that's why I let you go first, because I get to rattling. Josie, did you have anything to contribute to what? Well, I guess you're going to read the same verse in your Bible, and then you can make a comment if you have one.
Okay. So they took him just as he was and started out, leaving the crowds behind, though other boats followed.
Okay. Do you want to comment on that?
No.
Okay. All right. In the Amplified, it says, So leaving the crowd, they took him with them, just as he was, in the boat, and other boats were with them. So mine's basically the same as yours, pretty close. So that's something that it's been there all the time, but I hadn't really made note in my mind that there was more than one boat. There was only one boat that had Jesus, of course, because he was in the natural. So he could only be in one place at a time. He couldn't be all over the place. That's what he sent the Holy Spirit to do, is to be him all over the place, so to speak. But he was in one boat, and that boat evidently was leading the rest of them in a sense, because it says there were other boats with him. So anyway, there's more than one boat. Okay. Now, verse 37, Mr. Dave.
And there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship, so that it was now full.
Any comments?
No.
Yeah, it's pretty much tells it like it is. All right, Josie, would you read 37?
But soon a terrible storm arose. High waves began to break into the boat until it was nearly full of water and about to sink.
Oh my. Yeah, that is scary. Any comments? No. And Amplified says, and a fierce windstorm began to blow, and waves were breaking over the boat so that it was already being swamped. Which is, I like the way it said it in Josie's version better, because there's no doubt about it. When it's almost full of water, it's scary. It might sink. I don't know how it sounds to you. I don't know. It doesn't mention any rain. It just mentions windstorm, and so I don't know. Don't hurricanes have wind and rain with them, or do they? I haven't studied hurricanes. I should have studied hurricanes before tonight. I didn't. I don't know, but it sounds like it's vicious enough, that it's really scary and vicious like hurricanes and like tornadoes are, but it's out on the water instead of on the land like a tornado, but a hurricane's out on the water.
Well, I didn't know what difference hurricane and a typhoon, so, there's two different ones on the water.
Yeah, so there's several different ones, and maybe they didn't call it a hurricane because they didn't know of hurricanes back then, or maybe they didn't call it a hurricane because you usually think of hurricanes coming from the ocean, not in a little lake or something.
In a way, I think hurricane is bigger than a typhoon. I don't know.
So that could be the reason. This is a windstorm,
Yeah.
which was still plenty scary. We've had some thunderstorms that were scary and did some damage, but they said they weren't tornadoes. So,
Yeah, we have tornadoes or straight winds.
Mm-hmm.
So there's two different things there.
Right. And so it's like there's just so many. It would be interesting to do a study on it, but it's not a have-to for the main message that we need to get out of it. But either way you look at it, it was because of it. It was threatening to them. They felt like they were going to lose their lives. It looked like the ships might sink, and I'm sure they had whatever they could to, and were trying to get that water out of the boats as best as they could. So anyway, it was not fun to go through that. All right, verse 38, Mr. Dave.
And he was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awake him and say unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish?
Okay, that's interesting. Do you have a comment on that, Dave?
Well, apparently there was no problem for Jesus.
No, he was at peace. They're having a panic attack, and they're unhappy with him because he doesn't seem to care. How many times do we bring something to God in prayer, and it doesn't seem like he's getting too excited over it, and it doesn't seem like he's too concerned, and it doesn't seem, underlying the seem, that he's going to do anything about it. And that's how they felt towards Jesus, I guess, by the way they talked to him. They said, don't you care that we're about to die? And they don't even mention the fact that he might die, so it's like, do they believe he can get killed too or not? I don't know. And maybe the we was supposed to include him. I don't know. All right, Josie, you want to read that same verse, 38, and see if we get any other enlightenments?
Jesus was asleep at the back of the boat with his head on a cushion. Frantically, they wakened him, shouting, Teacher, don't you even care that we are all about to drown?
Yeah. You still die whether you drown or something else, but yeah, that's more specific. That's even telling how they think they're going to die. So, yeah. You have any comments to make about that? Okay. All right. And mine says about the same thing, except for it says, but Jesus was in the stern, which is the back part of the boat. And nowadays the stern may include a motor, whereas back then I don't think they had any motors that had been invented. So, but the stern is the back part of the boat. And let me see if I put anything else in there on stern here. The rear of the boat. Nope, I didn't put anything else on there. Anyway, he was in the stern, and he was asleep with his head on the sailor's leather cushion. And they woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are about to die?" They don't understand how he can be at such peace. They don't understand how he can sleep through it all. But when you're at total peace, you can sleep through all kinds of stuff. Oh, goodness. All right. Dave, will you read verse 39?
And he arose and rebuked the wind and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm.
Any comments?
All he had to do is speak to it.
He had great authority, didn't he? He knew who he was.
Well, he's teaching us something.
Mm-hmm. Yep. He didn't need to get all excited about it. He knew who he was, and he knew the outcome, and he knew him knowing all that he knew, he had peace about it, that it was going to be okay. Plus, he already told him they were going to go to the other side. He knew they were going to make it. Because he didn't say things like that if it's not true. All right, Josie, 39.
Then he rebuked the wind and said to the sea, Quiet down. And the wind fell, and there was a calm, great calm.
Do you want to make any comments? Okay. Amplified says, and he got up and sternly rebuked the wind. He didn't say, "Oh, wind, will you please stop blowing?" He said it with a firm. They said sternly. I would have said firm. Sternly rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Hush, be still," which means muzzled. The wind died down as if it had grown weary, and there was at once a great calm, a perfect peacefulness. It happened quickly, didn't it? If God says it's going to be a certain way, and the wind is doing whatever it's, I don't know, programmed to do or wants to do, whatever way you want to look at it, and he tells it to be still and be at peace, it's going to respond to whatever he says immediately. It's not going. If the wind could talk, it wouldn't say, "Oh, I might do that tomorrow." No. If you use your imagination a little bit, you can come up with some other scenarios, but better than mine. But it responded to Jesus' authority immediately. Okay. Dave, will you read verse 40, please?
And he said unto them, Why are ye so fearful? How is it that ye have no faith?
Okay. Any comments?
Well, they're fearful, and they have no faith.
What does that tell you? You
Well,
can't have both of them at the same time, can you?
Yep. It's one or the other.
Okay,
They
Josie?
haven't-
Oh,
they
go
haven't-
ahead, Dave.
They haven't learned for themselves, and they're waiting for him to do everything. They're waiting for Jesus to do everything. Meanwhile, Jesus is God in the flesh, teaching them that they can be like him.
That's a good point. I like that. Okay. Any other comments before we go on? No? All right. Dave, will you read verse 40, please? Oh, wait a
He
minute. You
already
just
did.
did. You just did.
He already did.
How, with so few verses, how could I lose my place already? But I did. All right. So it's Josie's turn to read verse 40.
And he asked them, "Why were you so fearful? Don't you even yet have confidence in me?"
Any comment about that, Josie? All right. Amplified says, Jesus said to them, "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith and confidence in me?" Now, I think he's in a roundabout way reminding them, you just witnessed me casting out devils and demons from some of these people that were possessed. You just witnessed me healing people that were sick. And off and on throughout the time we've been together, you've witnessed me doing a lot of things. And still you don't trust me? You heard me say we were going to go to the other side. You still don't trust me? You don't have confidence that I know what I'm talking about? What's the matter with you people? You don't believe what you read, you don't believe what you see, you don't believe what you hear. I don't understand why you don't have confidence in me yet and don't trust me. Okay, Dave, you want to read verse 41, please?
And they feared exceedingly and said one to another, "What manner of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?"
Comments?
Well, apparently they thought he was limited.
Yeah.
They didn't believe that he was God.
Nope. Didn't matter. He'd already told them. He wasn't listening. They weren't listening. I guess. Josie, you want to read how yours is worded?
And they were filled with awe and said among themselves, "Who is this man that even the winds and seas obey him?"
Any comment? No. The Amplified says they were filled with great fear, which the awe that they experienced that Josie said is similar, and because it's real close to fear. It's kind of a fearful awe. It's the amazement, and said to each other, "Who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him?" They're recognizing his power. They're recognizing his authority, but they still haven't accepted him as God in the flesh. They still have not at all. And let's go on ahead and do chapter 5, verse 1. Mr. Dave? Okay.
And they came over unto the other side of the sea, into the country of the Gadarenes.
Okay. They made it to the other side, just like Jesus said they would. That's why I wanted to read that verse. I wanted us to know they made it to the other side. I don't know how long it took them to get to the other side. It said earlier it was evening when they first got in the boats. So maybe it was next morning. I don't know. It doesn't clarify that. Evidently, it's not that big of a deal. But we can understand why he was asleep in the boat. He'd been doing a lot that day, and his body was tired. So he gave it the rest it needed. And he wasn't fearful because he knew that they were going to make it to the other side. So, well, we've got about 25 minutes for prayer requests and further comments or any songs that may have come to you, or we can read some more in this. Also, there are two other witnesses to this occasion. One is in Matthew and one is in Luke, and we could read them and we could just take turns reading them, and that would give us, I don't know if that'll give us some more perspective, but because when you have more than one witness, you usually have more than one version of the incident or whatever it is you're talking about. So we could do that. Would you like to do that? Let's go on ahead and try that. Let's turn to Matthew 8. I wrote them down, but I didn't plan on us doing them because I didn't know how long it would take us or how short it would take us to do the incident from Mark. But this is from Matthew's point of view, and it's chapter 8, starting in verse 23. And I believe it's the same incident. Anyway, I could be wrong, but it seems like it's the same storm. Let's just put it that way. I'm pretty sure it is. Anyway, it followed the same course geographically. Okay, let's do it. Dave, why don't you read 23, 24, and 25, if you would.
And when he was entered into a ship, his disciples followed him. And behold, there arose a great tempest in the sea, inasmuch that the ship was covered with the waves, but he was asleep. And his disciples came to him and awoke him, saying, Lord, save us, we perish.
Okay. Different way to put it, but basically means the same thing. So those were pretty big waves that were splashing into the boat. No wonder they were scared. The waves are powerful. They're probably strong enough to knock a few people overboard, but it doesn't say any of them were knocked overboard, so.
Well, it's worded different.
Yeah, it is worded different.
Using the word tempest and, perish. Saying, Lord, save us, we perish.
Right.
We're going to die.
It's a good observation. Do you have any observations you want to bring to our attention? Okay, she didn't. All right. All right. Josie, would you read 25, 26, and 27, please?
The disciples went to him and wakened him, shouting, Lord, save us, we're sinking. But Jesus answered, "O you men of little faith, why are you so frightened?" Then he stood up and rebuked the wind and waves, and the storm subsided, and all was calm.
One more verse.
The disciples just sat there awed. "Who is this?" they asked themselves, "that even the winds and the sea obey him."
Okay. You have any comments about that? Did you notice differences in wording that kind of stood out to you, or? Okay. How about you, Dave?
Well,
Okay, it's pretty close to what we'd read before in Mark. Okay. All right, I'm going to read, let's see, verses 28, 29, and 30. Wait a minute. No, let's see. Wait a minute. I might not need to. I don't want to get into a different... Okay, I'm going to read 28, and I'm not sure about any further than that. When he arrived at the other side in the country of the Gadarenes, it mentions 2 demon-possessed men coming out of the tombs met him. Anyway, it gets into another part of the tale, but it agrees that they came out on the other side in the same location, so I think it's the same story, because even though I didn't have you read further in the account in Mark, he continues doing that, casting demons out of people and healing, and so on and so forth. And so it's like he didn't change any from it. He's been doing this all along. It's just amazing that these people, after witnessing all this, they're like doubting Thomas, except for worse, because when doubting Thomas saw it, he started to believe. These guys, even after they saw it, didn't believe. So it's kind of crazy. Okay, we're going to let's go to Luke. See what Dr. Luke has to say. We're going to go to chapter 8 again. If I can get my fingers to work. All right, chapter 8 in Luke, and we're going to start in verse 22. And let's see here. Okay. All right. Dave, if you will read verse 22 and 23.
now it came to pass on a certain day that he went into a ship with his disciples, and he said unto them, Let us go over unto the other side of the lake. And they launched forth. But as they sailed, he fell asleep, and there came down a storm of wind on the lake, and they were filled with water, and were in jeopardy.
Okay. Any comments on that?
Says a storm came down, and so that sounds like something like a
I'm glad you pointed it out. I didn't read the Amplified, but in the Amplified it has in parentheses, it swept down as though a wind tunnel. So it almost sounds like tornado on the lake. Now, I don't know. I didn't think they did that, but, I would have to. I don't know the difference between a wind tunnel and a tornado, so.
That's one of those funnel things.
Hmm.
Water has to do with water.
Yeah, it seems like I've heard of them. They're a little bit different than the tornadoes because they're like a tornado, but they pick up the water or something. Yeah. So anyway, it was still vicious and violent and scary to people in the natural. All right. Josie, will you read 24 and 25, please?
They rushed over and woke him up. Master, Master, we are sinking, they screamed. So he spoke to the storm, quiet down, he said, and the wind and waves subsided and all was calm. And 25.
And 25, please.
Then he asked them, where is your faith? And they were filled with awe and fear of him, and said to one another, who is this man that even the winds and waves obey him?
They've never experienced the winds and waves obeying them. So I can understand them being in awe of that. We tend to base a lot of things on what we personally have experienced, and so they're probably going, how did he do that? But they're still not recognizing that he's God in the flesh. So
Well, apparently Jesus planned this because he immediately got in the boat and went to sleep.
yeah.
So obviously he knew that a storm was coming. Let's go to this other side here. Let's get in the boat because I know there's a storm coming and y'all are going to be so afraid. You're going to have to see another witness of what I can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they weren't recognizing their lack of faith, were they, until he pointed this out to them.
Yeah, nothing is impossible.
Right. Right. All right, verse 26 and part of 27, I guess. Then they sailed to the country of the Gerasenes, which is the Gadarenes, which is east of Galilee. And then Jesus stepped out on land. He was met by a man from the city of Gerasa who was possessed with demons. Anyway, it goes on to tell, he's back to casting out demons. So he didn't let their lack of confidence in him or their lack of belief stop him from doing what God wanted him to do. And that's a lesson we can take for ourselves. When we feel the inclination to do something and we have a knowing in our heart that's what God wants us to do, there's going to be people around us that don't agree with what we're doing. They're going to disagree that it was from God. They're just not going to put their trust in us. But if we have God in our heart, if he is for us, who can be against us? If he tells us to do something, he promised he would give us the ability to do it. So we can't let other people's opinions or comments or lack of confidence or lack of belief keep us from doing what God has impressed upon us to do as individuals. We just need to remember it's of utmost importance to do things God's way. Whoa! You woke me up. I was talking in my sleep. No, I had to be talking in my sleep if you woke me up, right? Anyway, that's all I have to say, unless there's somebody that's got more comments that... Oh, I do have one more comment. It wasn't that hard for them to get in the boat. They all climbed in the boat and followed one another. That was the beginning. I should start with this. That was the beginning. And they didn't argue with him when he said they were going to go to the other side. The problem was between the beginning and the destination, between the beginning and arriving at the destination, there's always a middle. And the middle can be full of all kinds of challenges and scary things. But what does this story tell us to do? Put our faith and confidence and trust in Jesus when we're in the middle.